Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Make It Simple TV. I am Heather Porter. I am one of your co-hosts. Now, in Make It Simple, we always bring in our inner circle of guests, friends, colleagues from all over the world to share some amazing lessons in life and business. And of course, I am welcomed by my other co-host, Andrew McCauley. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey, Heather. Great to be on the show again. I can't believe another week has flown by, and we have an awesome guest on today again. And I'm looking forward to it. He is a special guest. In fact, he was the very first person we had on our online footprint cover edition, very first edition we had all those months, well, 18 months ago now. So it's going to be great to catch up with him and see what he's doing, because I know he's kicking some huge goals.
That is for sure. Now, we're really, really excited about our guest today. Our guest is John Lee Dumas. He's a podcasting expert and the founder and host of Entrepreneur on Fire. He's awarded Best in iTunes in 2013. Wow. He interviews entrepreneurs 7 days a week and has been featured in Forbes, Inc., and Time magazine. Entrepreneur Fire generates over 750,000 unique listens every single month with past guests such as Seth Godin and Tim Ferriss. Welcome to the show, John. How are you?
Well, I was just telling you guys pre-interview chat here in San Diego, the sun is shining and the birds are singing, so life is good, guys, and I am definitely prepared to ignite today.
That's fabulous. Now, John, we always love to start the show where you tell us your journey. Where have you come from to get all the way to the most successful podcaster of Entrepreneur on Fire?
It was quite the windy path. I'm not going to short shrift that. I was just a country boy from the state of Maine. Went to college on an Army ROTC scholarship. So as soon as I graduated, I was officer serving our country. Specifically, I did a 13-month tour of duty in Iraq at 23 years old, and I spent the next couple years in the Army till I was 26, which was the end of my first kind of active duty commitment. So I entered the reserves at that point, and that's when my journey started kind of taking some pretty interesting twists and turns. I tried law school. I hated it. I quit after one semester. I tried corporate finance, found financial success, but it was just a hollow lifestyle for me. I tried both residential and commercial real estate here in San Diego and also back in Maine where I was born and raised. And again, there were some wins, some losses there, but overall it just was a hollow type of career path that I felt I was on. And that was for 6 years, from 26 to 32. I was pretty much swinging and missing in every different career opportunity that I was trying. But then, I never stopped learning. I never stopped believing that at some point I would find my passion. I just had no idea what that passion would take the form of and when that would be. And I kept reading the right books. I kept listening to the right podcasts, never knowing, by the way, as I was listening to podcasts for 4 years, that I would ever produce a podcast. I just looked at them purely as a way to consume audio, like I would listen to an audiobook. And sure enough, stuck in traffic one day going to work, boom, ran out of podcasts, and it hit me like a bag of bricks that the reason I kept running out of podcasts is because everybody was doing a weekly show, and that's powerful, but where was that 7-day-a-week podcast? It didn't exist, guys. I decided to be that crazy person that was going to try to put together a 7-day-a-week podcast interviewing today's most inspiring and successful entrepreneurs. I hired a mentor, Jamie Tardy, who also told me I was crazy. I joined a mastermind, Cliff Ravenscraft's podcast mastermind. He's the podcast answer man. He also told me I was crazy. But, I believed. I knew that if I wanted a 7-day-a-week podcast, other people would too. So if I could just figure out how to create that show and not get burnt out, then good things could come. And here we are, 22 months after launch, not even that far, not even at the 2-year mark yet. We're 22 months post-launch. We have generated over 8 million downloads. We're consistently a top-ranked business podcast. We've interviewed over 650 entrepreneurs. And we generate over $200,000 in gross revenue every single month.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to ask you about that revenue thing in just a moment.
Sure.
But, going into when you started, and you said less than 2 years ago, and I was lucky enough to be a guest on one of your podcasts early in the piece, And I know even back then, you still had a fairly rapid rise of listeners back then for podcasts, for numbers for podcasts these days. I mean, the current numbers are just huge. But even back then, in your first 40 or 50 podcasts, you still had a really, really good traction. What do you think that was due to? Was it the quality of the guests? Was it being consistent every day? What do you think gave you that initial run?
It definitely was not the quality of the host, I can promise you that. And in fact, I can't even go back and listen to my first 50-ish episodes because it really hurts. You know, it's like that person that listens to their music recital from 10 years ago, or, you know, any number of things you can put an analogy to, but it did definitely have to do in a way with the quality of my guests. I mean, I went big early. I had Seth Godin, Gary Vaynerchuk, Tim Ferriss, Chris Brogan, Andrew McCauley, like you name it. I had them early, and that was powerful. So that really allowed me to have some kind of notoriety. But I think above and beyond that, Andrew, the major reason that Entrepreneur on Fire shot out like a bottle rocket at first is that first mover's advantage. I really was that first podcaster that was coming out with a 7-day-a-week podcast that was interviewing entrepreneurs and sharing their journey. And that just kind of built up a lot of natural buzz around it just because it was unique, it was different, you know, which is one thing that I always do love pointing to now is, you know, what is your unique selling proposition? What's your USP? What sets you apart from the market? You know, I had something very distinct that set me apart from the market, and that allowed me to gain a lot of notoriety and traction early. And believe me, that early buzz actually, and I'm happy to share everything, income numbers, download numbers, everything, and I show charts, I show graphs, I show it all. But you know, that early notoriety, that first mover's advantage really helped ramp me up. But then I definitely hit a little plateau and even dipped down for a while because, and I won't get into too many specifics here, but you know, after my 8 weeks of notoriety and really getting great numbers and new and noteworthy, I dropped off of the new and noteworthy, and I was no longer being featured at the top of iTunes, which is only for podcasts that are 8 weeks and younger. So I saw a drop off. You know, there was a lot of internal struggle with me, wondering if this was it. Is this going to be, you know, is this just the beginning of the end now? But that ramp up was real. The plateau and the slight dip was real as well. But what I really did at that point was build a new foundation at a lower level. And then it's slowly and steadily grown since then. There's been no hockey stick that's gone shot up. You know, it's been slow and steady.
Yeah, and you know, you say you are one of the newer people to, or you're one of the first to embrace that 7 day a week. You've also done something else which is very, I think it's talked about a fair bit, and that's open yourself up to financials. You know, you're happy to talk about what sort of money you're making, and in fact you do display this every month on your website. You give the breakdown, and it's a pretty impressive and detailed profit and loss sort of statement that you show people. And I mean, to me that's an amazing thing. It's a vulnerable thing to do. How have you found the reaction to that, and what sort of feedback are you getting from different parts of the market about that?
Absolutely. So I'm a big believer, and I've seen it in over the 600 and now 50 plus interviews that I've done. You know, every successful entrepreneur these days is truly standing on the shoulders of giants. You know, it's people who have come before us, who have shown us the way, who have given us ideas, who have sparked aha moments, all of these things. It's really incredible to see. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and just kind of take responsibility for being like the first mover in the situation where it comes to income reports, because for me, even before I was in the entrepreneurial game, when I was still slugging it out in corporate America, but I was starting to kind of open my eyes up and see what was out there. And so I started following people, you know, like Michael Hyatt, like Michael Stelzner of Social Media Examiner, and then Pat Flynn. And, you know, Pat, he's resonated with a lot of people for, you know, all the right reasons. But one of those reasons that really resonated with me and I loved was he was actually a guy now for years. I want to say me going on 4 years now. He's been publishing his monthly income reports. And, you know, this was way before I even took my first step into the entrepreneurial game, let alone started making money. And I was so impressed by that. I'm like, here's a guy that's transparent. He's willing to just lay it out on the line, show people A, what's working, B, why it's working, C, what's not working, and D, how you can avoid what's not working. He's laying it all out on the line there, and I really respected that courage. You know, it was something that I really saw as an officer in the U.S. Army. The officers that I respected most were those that were willing to put themselves out there, were willing to put themselves in the middle, and in the line of fire, so to speak, for the good of the common cause. And so when we started generating legitimate income, and we had like our first $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 month, I turned to Kate and I said, Kate, Pat Flynn is doing some great things. He is showing what it means to be courageous in this online entrepreneurship world for passive income, for niche websites, for affiliate income. I go, we're doing something totally different. We're a podcast, and we're monetizing in a lot of different ways. I want to be that beacon of light and information for podcasters. I want to open up our kimono, so to speak, and expose our financials. I want to show people what's working for us so they can emulate our successes. I want to show people what's not working for us, where we fail, different potholes that we fell into, so that they can avoid those. Because as entrepreneurs, all we have is time, and I don't want people to waste their most precious resource on things that I know and I've proven, by hook or by crook, is just not something that's able to really monetize at this level. So back in September of 2013, so coming up on close to a year ago now, about 10 months, we published our first income report, quickly followed by our year in review income report, where we did an income report from September of 2012, the day we launched, to September of 2013, which is a total income less than we do on a monthly basis now, just showing you that when you first start, nothing just starts overnight. I mean, we had a big building process towards that. We went through 9 months of absolutely nothing in the green before we did turn that corner. But when we did, we turned it in a big way. So to answer your question, that was really where I wanted to focus, was kind of being that beacon of light. I wanted to show people exactly where we were making our money, how we were. And I want even to take it to the next level, Andrew. So I bring my certified CPA on every single month. He verifies all of our income reports because he has complete access to our accounts. But then even above that, he's adding value by giving a great tax tip and really sharing some cool stuff for Fire Nation.
Yeah, I love how he does that, and it's if you haven't seen it, go and check it out. entrepreneuronfire.com or eofire.com. I did speak to somebody early in the piece, and we're talking about your podcast. This is way back before, probably within your first 60 interviews, and we're talking about the traffic and how busy you were, and someone said, oh, yeah, that's all good having traffic, but you'll never make any money out of it because it's a podcast. So I'm very glad that you've been able to knock that on its head and show people that it really is a viable business, and you've just done an awesome job. So
thank you.
Good on you. Well done.
John, I'm curious, would you mind sharing with us, based on your financial reports, what your biggest pitfall has been and what your biggest success has been looking over them over the past year or so?
No, absolutely. So I'll start with our biggest success, and that has definitely been products and services. A lot of people looked at podcasting and they were really just kind of stuck on the sponsorship model. And to be honest with you, that's really where we started monetizing the largest at the beginning. Our first our first 5-figure month was 7 months post-launch or 10 months post-idea phase. And that was like around a $13,000 or $14,000 month, with about 10,000 of that being sponsorship. So sponsorship started off being the biggest revenue generator for us. But as our audience has grown and as our business has evolved and as our podcast downloads have gotten larger, so has our sponsorships for sure. For the month, for the quarter of the third quarter, so July, August, and September, Entrepreneur on Fire sold out at a flat $46,000 per month, every single month. Sold out, sold out, sold out. So that's continued to grow as a revenue source and continued to be obviously a very great way that we generate income. But what is vastly overshadowed sponsorships and moved into the number one place is those products and services that I was telling you about, and specifically two that we really focus on. Number one is our flagship community, Podcasters Paradise, and that is it's just under 1,200 members as of today. We just had a live webinar where we brought in 27 more members. It's now a 1,143 member podcasting community of people who are looking to create, grow, and monetize their podcasts. And I can tell both of you too, like when I launched Entrepreneur on Fire back in September of 2012, if you had told me that, about a year and a half from that point, I'd be running one of the largest podcasting communities, which is now the largest podcasting community in the world, I would have told you were crazy, because I barely at that point knew how to podcast. And I was thinking that my products and services, if I ever created them, would be more in the entrepreneurial world, more like in the business, like how to create an avatar or just whatever it may turn out to be. But this is just a great showing of you need to listen to your audience, you need to hear what their pains are, see what they're struggling with, and then create solutions for them. So my audience was sharing with me every single pain point they were having, and the loudest voice that was screaming over and over again was, John, how do I create a podcast? How do I grow this audience? How do I actually monetize a podcast like you have? So we listened, and then we created this community for them. So products and services has become by far our largest. In fact, in the month of July, we're probably going to cross $200,000 alone in product and service sales when you combine sales of Podcasters Paradise and Webinar on Fire together. Just the product and service aspect will be over 200K, where everything else will be less than $100,000 in all cumulative. So it's a massive opportunity for anybody that's looking to grow an audience to really turn that ear towards your audience and just listen, and then really see what those struggles are, and then create those solutions. And I mean, failures, I mean, where do we start? That's the thing, is that if I wasn't failing every single month and every single week and even every single day, then I start to question it, and I start to say, Kate, like, where are we not pushing the envelope enough? Where are we not really stretching? And I think there's a great example of that, actually, and it would actually be the precursor to Podcasters Paradise. Again, I was starting to hear the rumbles of people that they wanted to have some kind of podcasting solution. And so without really engaging my audience too much, and this is my biggest failure, I spent a lot of time, energy, effort, and money creating what is called Pod Platform, which was going to be basically a done-for-you podcasting service where people would just send me their raw MP3 file after they recorded it. I would assemble a team that would edit it, that would add the intros and outros, that would host it on my own server, that would submit it to iTunes and would do all this stuff. And I spent a lot of time creating these systems, and then it became very apparent when we brought the first few people on board that this was not a scalable model in any way, shape, and form for what I was looking to do. There have been some people since that have launched successful companies like this, and they're working for sure. I can actually throw out a couple names. But I quickly saw, for what I was looking to build as an entrepreneur, as the business owner of Entrepreneur on Fire, it was not for me. Going back and forth because we forgot one during an editing phase, not getting a podcast, the podcast not refreshing or getting out to iTunes in time because, and just all this back and forth. And I was just like, I realized that I've gone down the wrong path belatedly because I didn't test correctly. So I turned back the clocks, I unwound these relationships, and luckily I hadn't brought that many people in up to that point, so I was able to do so. And then I just kind of took a month off, refocused, and that's where Podcasters Paradise was born, which just hit the ground running and has been amazing since. And the quick differentiator to share is we brought 27 people into Podcasters Paradise today, which is a $1,200 price point. And that is not causing me any more work than it was before we brought those 27 people in. Because now they're inside of Podcasters Paradise, the community. The video tutorials are there. All the recorded webinars are there. The private Facebook group with 1,000 people is there that they're engaging with. It's all there. It's scalable. It's leverageable. This community can grow to a massive size without me having to take on any more of that bandwidth. I've created the system. I've created, the community, and now it runs itself with, some exception.
Awesome. All right, I want to change tact a little bit. Give us what's one tool or resource that you can't live without these days?
That's a really great question, specifically for this interview right here, because this is the biggest game changer for me, Andrew. Like the biggest game changer. When I first started Entrepreneur on Fire, people rightfully so are saying, John, you're going to go crazy trying to schedule 30 entrepreneurs every single week, every single month. These are busy entrepreneurs. They have schedules, they have meetings, they have their own stuff going on. Like, you're literally going to be doing nothing else but scheduling and rescheduling these Entrepreneur on Fire interviews that you're doing. And, you know, there was a lot of truth to that. I mean, when I was just going back and forth via email, it was a mess. And that's how I started, because I didn't know any better. I thought that that was it. Fortunately, just a mere couple months in, you know, maybe actually only 1 month after launch, I started realizing and seeing other people using some tools, and I did a lot of research, and I found what I truly believe is by far the best tool, and it's only gotten better and better and better as I've become, you know, such an active user on it. They continue to upgrade and just make it even more awesome, and that is Schedule Once. And Schedule Once is basically a calendar booking resource that allows me to come up with as many different unique URL links as I want to, and then email people and say, hey, Andrew, I'd love for you to be an Entrepreneur on Fire. Click here on this link to book a time that worked for you. You click on that link, and it will only open up times on Mondays from here and for the next 6 months. And you can't book anything else. You can just book on Mondays. And then once you book, Andrew, it's going to say, okay, before you confirm, I need your Skype ID, I need a 50-word bio, and by the way, here's the interview flow just so you have it. And it's all automated. And then you'll book. I'll get a notification. It'll be booked in my calendar. I don't have to do anything else. And then the day comes, you get a 24-hour reminder from Schedule Once. Then you get a 5-minute reminder, as do I. And then we start talking, and it's flawless. And the beauty is, when I said there's multiple links, I also am interviewed on other shows. So when people reach out to me, I only allow myself to be interviewed between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on Saturdays. That's the time frame that I've blocked in. And they're 25-minute back-to-back interviews, 8 interviews every Saturday. So I send them a separate Schedule Once link, and they can only book during that time under my conditions. And it has taken control of my calendar. There's no back and forth. It saved me thousands of hours.
We're very lucky to have you on at this time. Then, if we got outside your window, so thanks for jumping on.
Like, you're Andrew McCauley. I mean, come on.
Well, I feel privileged.
Well, you're Heather Porter.
Well, there you go. John, we love to leave our listeners and our viewers with 3 simple tips that they can action straight away. So, what are your 3 simple tips for them if they're interested in podcasting?
So, podcasting specifically, I do have to say this. It's a shameless plug, but I mean, it's just pure value, so I don't feel that bad about it, because every single week we do a completely free, a completely live podcast workshop where for 45 minutes we just deliver nothing but value. It's just, how do you want to create, grow, and monetize your podcast? I walk you through the steps. It's a video tutorial. I show you some super hacks if you are currently podcasting and you're looking to grow your audience. I literally just give it all away for 45 minutes every single week. If you go to podcastersparadise.com, you can claim your spot to the next. It's totally free webinar, and we do it every week. I love it. I just had one again a couple hours ago. There's 175 people on, and it was amazing. And, you know, those people all left like raving. There's a chat room for them. You know, Kate's manning the chat room. It's incredibly fun. You know, number 2, the tip for podcasting, like I would say specifically, start joining Facebook and LinkedIn groups in your niche, in your industry. If that's fishing, if that's sports, fashion, whatever it might be, you need to start becoming a valuable member in communities where your avatar is going to be living, is going to be breathing, is going to be engaging. And if you can become a valuable member of these communities now before your podcast actually launches, or even after it launches, if you can just become a face that people see, if you can become a trusted member, you're giving value, feedback, constructive criticism, and you're asking for it too, and you're developing real relationships, what you're doing is you're building a tribe of people that are going to want your content when it's ready. And nobody's doing this, and it kind of really surprises me that people aren't taking the opportunity to just become valuable members of these incredibly niched communities that are existing as we speak in Facebook and LinkedIn and other social media platforms. Like right now, there's amazing conversations going on about whatever topic you love, about your niche that you're most passionate about. It's happening right now. You're missing it, and that's fine, but you could become a part of that if you wanted to, and that would be just such a game changer. And then the third thing that I really want to say is the best thing that I ever did was get a mentor, like Jamie Tardy of The Eventual Millionaire. Despite her trying to discourage me from doing a 7-day-a-week podcast, in so many other ways, she just was able to point me in the right direction, build relationships. I mean, connect me with people through her relationships that I was able to build relationships with. It was a total fast forward button for me because I had that mentor. And in that same breath, in that same third tip is, she was the one that said, John, you have to get into a mastermind. And those masterminds are critical. And these masterminds should be no less than 3 and really no more than 5. And I'm just talking about with one specific mastermind. You can be in multiple more larger, bigger ones, that's fine. But if you can really find between 3 and 5 people that you really are in the same niche with, the same community with, that are doing similar things as you, that's going to be a game changer. I meet with my 3-person mastermind every single week for an hour. Every time I walk away, completely energized with popping ideas going off. And that mastermind right there is where you can practice your skills as an interviewer. You can get on a mic and just practice interview them. You can ask them for honest feedback, knowing they're going to give it to you. Logo feed, all of these things your internal mastermind can do. So those would be the 3 biggest tips that I would say. Obviously, it all is involving, spending your time to build relationships and to build your connection of your circle. And that's really the essence of the success of Entrepreneur on Fire. People say, John, why is your podcast seem to be so successful? Well, I've had the opportunity to build relationships with 673 successful and inspiring entrepreneurs with one-on-one conversations that I've then shared on my platform, which is now large. And that's it. If I had done a weekly podcast, that number would be more like 65 or 70, and that's a game changer. So that's been one of the hugest reasons for my success, and it's all going back to the core of relationships.
I think that's the core of a lot of things on business these days. It's all about building relationships. Hear people talking about social media and get on social media, I'm going to sell my stuff. It's all about relationships, and I think you're just showing exactly how proof of that theory is totally
well, you too, Andrew, because remember, long ago, before I even had any kind of a monetization model or really much of a presence online, you took a chance on me and you featured me in the cover of your magazine, and that's something I've never forgotten. And so, I am Dr. No. I am Dr. No for everything. My inbox, it's just stuffed chock full of requests, of invitations, of XYZ. And I have to be Dr. No if I'm going to keep my eye on the prize and focus. But, the relationship that we've built means a lot to me. So when I get something from you because we have that relationship, I sit up and take notice.
Well, thank you. I certainly appreciate that too. Before we wrap up, give us what's the quote or a mantra that you like to live by now? I guess now, it may have been something that's evolved over time, but what would be the one that you live by now? A quote or a mantra?
Well, if you're listening right now and you think I'm a little bit crazy because I do a 7-day-a-week podcast, you're going to think I'm totally nuts now, because I'm actually next week, Andrew, launching another 7-day-a-week podcast. It's called Quotes on Fire. And it sounds pretty intense, but it's not. The systems I've set up, it's only a 2 to 4 minute podcast. I just record it 5 hours one day every 45 days, and then my VA does all the rest. The system is incredibly drilled down. But long story short, I share my mantra, my quotes, at the very early stages of Quotes on Fire, which is the cornerstone of how I built Entrepreneur on Fire. And it's a quote by Albert Einstein, and it goes, "Try not to become a person of success, but rather become a person of value." And I made a mistake many times in my earlier careers chasing success. I went to law school because I thought lawyers made a lot of money. I went to corporate finance because I, watched Boiler Room back in the day. I went to commercial real estate because I heard once somebody sold a $30 million, building. I did it for the wrong reasons. I was trying to find financial success, and I was doing sprints towards it, and I wasn't passionate about it. But then when I shifted my focus and I said, how can I become a man of value? And that was Entrepreneur on Fire. That was doing a 7-day-a-week free, consistent, valuable podcast that for 9 months was just that. From idea to launch was 3 months. Then from launch to actual monetizing was 6 months. So that was 9 months of just nose to the grindstone, no income to show for it before we turned that corner, just providing value. And it is true, success did follow.
Yeah, such an inspiring story, and I think a lot of people out there who are listening, if they're facing that, if they're in that 6 month, 9 month period right now, then keep working at it, and that's going to surely come. Before we go, what's one major life lesson you've shared your journey for us and with us? What's the biggest major life lesson you've learned so far?
So when you interview 673 different entrepreneurs, you definitely start to see all these different themes kind of start to crop up, and all these different kind of mantras and similarities throughout all these journeys. Every journey is unique and every journey is different, but a lot of the successful ones kind of seem to have a couple things poke out. And a life lesson, what I would love to share, and it's something that I'm going to kind of go into a couple ways about this. But the first thing, and it's a quote that I'm sure a lot of people have heard, but it's so true, and it's something that comes up time and time again on my show, is Jim Rohn's quote that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so many of my guests, until they finally just took out the trash, so to speak, and just pushed the bottom 3 or 4 people that were really kind of just keeping them down in life, and surrounded themselves with a different group of people, they weren't able to truly to recognize their success. So look around and really do a hard assessment of who you're spending most of your time with, because you will be the average of those 5 people. And there's just kind of a final quote that is, what's easy to do is also easy not to do. And the reality is that because of that, so many people choose not to do it because it's easy not to. Where it's the successful people are the ones that are disciplined and every single day get up and they do it, and it's easy to do, but they do it because they're disciplined, and it adds up over. And it may not seem like much at first. It's just like cutting out soda. Like 6 months down the road, like all of a sudden your love handles start disappearing. It's kind of one of those things in the entrepreneurial game. So what's easy to do is...
Oh, we might have lost him.
Right in the moment we were going to find it out. Bummer.
All right,
Andrew,
there you go. You're back. We lost you for a brief second. So thank you. Hey, where can people find out more? Where can they go and find out about the podcast and whatever you've got? Where can they go and find out more?
So all the magic happens for us at eofire.com. That's our headquarters. That's everything. And if people are thinking that podcasting is something for them, that free live podcast workshop happens every single week at podcastersparadise.com. They can go there and claim their spot for the next one. I send a little gift along as well that they'll enjoy, and overall we just have a blast.
Awesome. H, wrap it up for us.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We will pop all of the links for John over at makeitsimple.tv, episode number 16, and we have a bio there for him as well. Please come on over, let us know what you think. And Andrew, do you have any last thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, I just want to say that if you haven't had a chance to listen to his podcast, he has some amazing people on there. I've got a friend of mine who listens to you every day, and he keeps telling me, wow, did you listen to this one? Did you listen to that one? So he keeps me up to date.
No, I have a life. I can't listen to John Lee Dumas all the time.
So thank you for taking time out of your crazy busy schedule, and as you said, you're about to launch another 7-day-a-week podcast, so I can't wait to hear that as well. So it'll be dialed into my little podcatcher, and I'll be listening to it for sure. So thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's time to go paddleboarding, guys.
Nice. Enjoy it. All right, you guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Later.